All right. Hey, how are you? Great. Today we're going to be doing a little tour, guys. I'm going to take you around the Brooklyn Navy Yard. This might be a little shorter of a tour, but this is in a very important place here in Brooklyn. We're right across from Lower Manhattan. It's right there. And this is a place where now they're having, there's startups, there's all kinds of, there's movie studios, all kinds of things going on now, but it has a crazy history, extremely important in American history even. And before we start, guys, Cam, how are you?
It's a lovely day.
Oh, it's beautiful, man. We're just being blown away here. I am wearing long underwear, in case you guys were wondering. Very important. I'm a big advocate. But also, before we start, guys, check out the Patreon. That's how we fund these things. That's how we keep the long underwear on our legs, and how this thing's going to grow. Also, like and subscribe. If you've seen one of these videos before, you know this is going to be good, baby. So just go ahead and get it out of the way now, so you can just kick back and watch the video. All right. So before I blow away, before my hat blows away, before I, fall into the river, let's get this thing started. What do you think, Cam? Should we do this?
Game time.
Let's do it. All right, we're here in the freaking wind to talk to you about this area that was and became the Brooklyn Navy Yard. This used to be, well, it is Wallabout Bay. This is one of the little entrances here to the Navy Yard, but Wallabout Bay is what the Navy Yard is based. There's a couple of, theories on why it's called Wallabout Bay. One is that it's named after the Walloons, who were these French-speaking early inhabitants here in New York. Another one is that it's named after the River Waal in the Netherlands, who were also, the Dutch were some of the early settlers here in New York. If you didn't know that, then you got some catching up to do on the history. But this whole area was sold, this guy named John Jackson, who was an early investor in the neighborhood of what is today Dumbo and Vinegar Hill, sold 40 acres to create the Navy Yard in the early 1800s, in 1801. Now, the Navy Yard kind of takes hold in the early 1800s. They use it for all the wars since, but this is the area that it was done in. It was actually used during the Revolutionary War as a place to park prison ships. There's actually a prison ship martyrs monument in Fort Greene, which I covered in the Fort Greene video. You should watch that. All right. But it actually housed prison ships in this bay, and like 11,500 people were killed. Pretty wild. They died of disease. They were in these ships where they died of disease, malnutrition, physical abuse. Sounds like the American public school system. Okay. Anyways, they died, and they actually, bodies would wash up on shore for years after that. Kind of crazy. In fact, this area here, the East River, people would always fall in from shipping. There were bodies wash up for years. In fact, Joseph Mitchell, a very famous New York writer, would write about how every April, when things started to thaw out, dozens of bodies sometimes would just wash up to the shore. I guess that's what you want when you're walking along the coastline with your Tinder date back in the day, and you're like, so what should we do? Should we go grab tapas? And she says, oh, what's that, a dead body? You're like, no, let's keep moving. You didn't see anything. But it's this little kind of, nook in the East River that you don't even realize, but there's tons of parking lots and warehouses in here still today. Although the clock is ticking on when they're gonna be, I feel like we're in a hurricane or something. But the clock is ticking on how long those things stay vacant. But we're going to talk about that as we go. Let's keep it moving. I'm going to fall into this freaking river and float up as one of the bodies here. Is that too dark, Cam?
I think it's pretty on brand.
Pretty on brand? All right. Let's keep it moving. So I'm standing here now in front of Quarters A, also known as the Commandant's House. This is where the Commandant, who was in charge of the Brooklyn Navy Yard, lived. How cool. In 1805, they built this, a nice federal-style house. They say designed by Charles Bulfinch, the first American architect in history, they say, and also John McComb Jr. That's right. You're probably thinking, hey, Tom, wait a minute. Is that the John McComb Jr. who designed City Hall and St. Patrick's Cathedral, the first one? Well, first of all, don't ever even think of interrupting me again. Second of all, you're correct. That's the John McComb Jr. Pretty cool. He was all over the place in the early 1800s. But this is where the Commandant lived. And yes, this is where today this is a private residence meaning that someone very important lives there. Who knows? Someone like, I don't know, Jonathan Taylor Thomas or Jessica Simpson. I don't know. But it's also right here, pretty close to the water in Brooklyn near Dumbo. It's very valuable real estate, estimated by some to be worth $87.4 trillion. Pretty cool. Another person who lived here actually before they were admiral was Matthew C. Perry, who became admiral of the U.S. Navy and was credited with establishing trade relations with Japan, which revolutionized and changed trade for the United States for a long time. That's right, Matthew Perry. And I know what you're thinking. I know you're thinking, oh, Matthew Perry, right? Could you be any more extra, as the kids say, huh? All right, rest in peace, buddy. But yeah, this is the Commandant's House, pretty cool. The base was closed in 1965, actually as part of a base closing initiative started by Robert McNamara under JFK initially, but it actually closed dozens of bases all over the country because it was wasteful. So then in the 1970s, they passed a law making it a lot more difficult to close bases, because why should the United States government get rid of wasteful things? That doesn't make any sense. We gotta waste. That's what has to be done. But it was closed here in the 1960s, and then other stuff happened, which we'll talk about. But this is the Commandant's House, Quarters A, baby. Pretty cool, right here next to the Brooklyn Navy Yard on the water. You don't even know this mansion exists. So, impress your friends. That's the point of these videos. All right. So the Brooklyn Navy Yard, guys, was actually really important. People don't even realize this little spot here. We'll talk about what it's used for today, but don't realize how important this was in American history. This is where, some of the most important ships in, military history were built. Things like the USS Monitor, which was actually a ship used in the Civil War. Called the Monitor because it was one of the first of the types of ships that actually monitored like the movements of, it was like heavy on guns, but not really too fast. It was meant to kind of monitor the movement through the ports in the South. So think of like a hall monitor, right? You monitor the movement, the monitor, hall monitor, without the smugness. Okay, it's like, yeah, I have a freaking hall pass to go to the bathroom, relax. All right, so the USS Monitor was built here, the first ironclad warship, which is what it was. This is actually where the USS Maine was constructed. I'm sure you know the Maine, Cameron, right?
Love it.
You love it. It's not much left to love, unfortunately, because it was sunk off the coast of Cuba in 1898 and precipitated the Spanish-American War, when all of the politicians and media seized on this mysterious sinking of the ship and called for war with Spain, to then, which they did, and then they defeated Spain and got Guam, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and control of Cuba briefly from the Spanish. So they basically fabricated this pretense to go into a war that a lot of people didn't want. And that's the last time the United States ever did that. And also, interesting fact, because of the Spanish-American War, it actually got the motivation for the annexation of Hawaii, which had actually been taken in a coup in 1893. They took it from the natives in 1893 in a coup. The sugar planters and all that stuff, kind of wild. And it wasn't until 1898 that they got the political will to turn it into a territory of the United States. Yeah, it's pretty messed up. They just took it from the natives there. They actually put the Queen under house arrest. Kind of wild. That's a little depressing. So here's a picture of my cat. Also, you have other ships built here. The USS Arizona, a massive warship that was built and actually was sunk on December 7th, 1941 in the attack on Pearl Harbor. And in fact, over half of the casualties at Pearl Harbor were on that ship. Here's a picture of my cat. Also, you have the USS Missouri, which was a very famous ship where the actual treaty and the, I guess, the truce was signed. The peace treaty was signed with Japan after the surrender. Articles, I guess surrender is a better word for it. Well, with Japan was signed at the end of World War II. After the 2 atomic bombs were dropped on Japan. Here's my cat. So you have all of those different ships that were kind of built here in Brooklyn Navy Yard before it was decommissioned in 1966. And it was during World War II that they repaired over 5,000 ships. They converted 250 ships into warships. It was the busiest shipyard in American history. Kind of nuts. And one of the first to employ women as technicians and engineers on these ships. So that's a big deal too. That was one of the big, I guess, turning points in industry here in New York. And it was also decommissioned in 1966 as part of a base closing initiative to cut down on waste. So then the city acquires this base in 1971, opens it as an industrial park, and then it picks up in the early 2000s, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this gate here is the Sands Gate. You may recognize it from the movie Saboteur, Alfred Hitchcock. Huh? You kids want to get a good director to watch? There's one. You can turn off your Coco Melon. Watch some Alfred Hitchcock, you 3-year-olds. Sorry. Anyways, it got repaired in 2015 and renovated. Looks really nice. Pretty cool. But yeah, this is the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Let's keep moving. We got a lot to cover, baby. Okay, so today the actual Navy Yard is run by a private organization known as the Brooklyn Navy Yard Development Corporation. This is an important point. A lot of the even public space in New York City is run by these private organizations. You talk about like different plazas and parks, Union Square, Central Park. This is important because while they may clean them up and make them safe, they also are not accountable to the voters. These are private groups, right? So, you know, you kind of make a deal with the devil a little bit because, you know, they can clean it up and all that stuff, but then they kind of have the last say as to what goes. And a lot of times their decisions are based on this, baby, not exactly on what's best for the people who aren't, let's say, the most wealthy or the things that don't necessarily raise the land value. So it's a kind of tricky situation. I actually talk about this with in a couple of interviews that I've published, one with Sharon Zukin, who's way smarter than me. I know you're thinking that's not saying a lot, but relax. Also another one with Benjamin Holzman, so you should check those out. But anyways, this group here has leased out a lot of the space to different enterprises. So today there's lots of little, you know, you have Mast Brothers Chocolate, started by these two bearded guys in, you guessed it, Williamsburg. But you also have, for example, Steiner Studios was one of the first big tenants here. They came in the early 2000s. They've filmed a lot of movies here. They filmed the Ninja Turtles, not the like good one in 1990. We're talking about the remake in 2014, which I can only describe using the title of another movie they filmed here, which is Trainwreck. I can only describe the experience of watching that Ninja Turtles movie with the title of another movie they filmed here, Rough Night. And it's part of what they call the Innovation Coastline, which kind of goes up the East River, up into Williamsburg, and then up all the way into Long Island City and Astoria. In fact, there's this Innovation Coastline where Amazon was going to set up shop and got pushed away, and people were like, screw you guys, we don't want you here. So anyways, that was an interesting thing. That's a whole nother one. I think I talked about in my Long Island City video. Check that one out. And this Brooklyn Navy Yard Development Corp is very dependent on partnerships with private corporations, private developers, loans. And this is an interesting, experiment because this was city land and it's being leased out for private purposes. So basically the city is becoming, in a way, a developer itself. And that's kind of an interesting, balance that you have to strike. Because then they're in it's kind of a conflict of interest, right? Like the city's interest is going to be different than, let's say, a developer's interest in just increasing land value. They also have interest for people who, you know, need housing, need affordable, all kinds of affordable services, etc. So it's an interesting experiment that they're conducting here. You also have New Lab, which is this giant incubator that takes in, I think it has over 250 different startup companies and gives them resources and mentoring and a huge place to work, etc. A startup is just, a small business with a ping pong table. Think about it that way. But all kinds of different things. There's all kinds of different, small companies, startup companies. You know, there's the Kings County Distillery. Pretty cool. A lot of the different things going on in this little area. Although they give you crud when you walk around with a camera in there, I can tell you that much. Why do you think we're filming from right here? we got the boot. You know, what can you do? And I said, hey, this is public land. And they said, we're going to arrest you. And I said, see you later. All right. Well, anyways, this is the outside of the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. Wow, we did it. We made it through this video. We talked about the Brooklyn Navy Yard. We talked about how it was started. We talked about what it became as a very important center of shipbuilding. We even went to the Commandant's House. How cool is that? We talked about what it is today. A lot to cover here, guys. I'll put some of the resources that you can check out more on what's happening in New York and in this place in the description. But I don't know. What do you think, Ken? We learned something today?
Learned a lot. Good day.
Hey, you're welcome. All right. Anyways, guys, if you liked it, give it a little thumbs up and subscribe or whatever. And also, check out the Patreon now, baby. You made it to the end. Come on. That's how I fund these things. That's very important for these types of projects and creators of content. All right. Anyways, guys, we're pretty much done. I'm gonna go thaw out my fingers. Dear God. And probably go catch pneumonia. See you guys later. Sick.